Hey every pony, I'm the Pony Fanboy, I fanboy over ponies and you just listen, and today we've got another Powerpuff Girls crossover fanfic. But this time it's crossed over with another Cartoon Network show, and it's called Ed, Edd, and Eddy, and I know that it's the Media Wiz's favorite show of all time, so I'm looking forward to this one. I'm very excited. I've never actually seen either of these shows, but I hear great things, and I'm gonna eventually get around to watching them since we have the hiatus till, Pony Life comes out. But either way, let's have fun with this fanfic. This is called The Ed Boys and the Powerpuff Girls, and it's 3 chapters, so we'll see if it's any longer than KP and Equestria Girls, which that was the longest Pony Fanboy reads I've ever done. But either way, let's have a good time with this story. This is The Ed Boys and the Powerpuff Girls, Chapter 1. Here we go. The Cul-de-sac of Peach Creek. No, wait, wrong show. Wait a minute, this is a fanfiction, and a crossover one at that. Oh, how exciting. That does mean that this isn't canon, which is a shame. I would have really loved to have tried one of those delicious jawbreakers. So good. Author. Narrator, just get on with the story already. Oh, right, my apologies, sir.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it!
So that means we're starting with the boys first. Correctamundo, exclaimed Eddy in a joyous fashion. Wait, did you just hear that? Yep, now scram! This is our scene. You know, I can't actually leave, right? Whatever, said Eddy as he rolled his eyes in annoyance and turned his attention back to the latest scam. You see, fair reader, this scam revolved around time travel, and thus a time-traveling machine was created. Or at least, resembled one. It was made out of a cardboard box, complete with a fake window and buttons drawn with marker on the front and back. The bottom was left open, as Eddy believed that Ed would just dump the box onto the latest pigeon. The person would be flung back via a rather gigantic rubber band tied to 2 trees. Don't ask how they managed to get that rubber band, even I couldn't wrap my head around it. He or she would land in the junkyard, where they would encounter various wax figures of dinosaurs. Eddy cleared his throat as he asked his 2 friends, Ed and Ed, or Double D as his friends called him, if the scam was finished. Double D replied, "Almost complete, Eddy. I just need to check if my trajectory is correct." The intelligent young lad proceeded to do so, while Ed was standing around idly, minding his own business. "Hey Lumpy, quit standing around. Get over here and help me with the box," yelled an impatient Eddy. Ed cheerfully walked over to Eddy's spot and held the box over his head. He walked all the way back over to the rubber band and held it back with one hand, while holding the box in the other. Eddy eagerly rubbed his hands together and said, "The time machine, oh Ed, is almost ready, ha ha ha." Meanwhile, in Townsville, "Girls," yelled the mayor, "Mojo Jojo's giant robot is attacking various buildings in Townsville, and he's about to attack the newly built pickle store. Oh, the horror!" Indeed, the mayor was right, as a giant 60s-style robot had damaged several buildings, and that malicious little monkey was inside its glass dome, laughing his head off. But just then, our favorite little heroines, the Powerpuff Girls, swooped in and ripped out the robot's arms. Afterwards, Blossom used her fantastic frost breath to freeze the robot's head. Bubbles then delivered 2 swift kicks in each leg, damaging them. Finally, to finish it all off, Buttercup rammed into the robot's body, causing it to fall to the ground. The girls then used their heat vision powers to fire at the robot's circular core, causing the entire machine to explode. The citizens of Townsville cheered in delight as the girls held up a frowning Mojo by the cape. Mojo growled, "Curses, rotten little Powerpuffs." However, as soon as he said those words, the atrocious ape gave an extremely sinister smile. "Oh Mojo, whatever could you be planning now?" He then pulled out a small remote, pressed a big ruby red button, that was apparently the only button on that remote, and teleported himself away. Everyone stood there in a mixture of shock and confusion. Bubbles asked, "Where did he go?" Blossom exclaimed, "He must have returned to his laboratory. Let's go, girls!" Our little heroines quickly flew off, and the citizens simply walked away, continuing with their lives. In his volcanic laboratory, Mojo cackled to himself, "Finally, the time is right. I will unleash my ultimate plan to get rid of those accursed Powerpuff Girls." Mojo sat near a fully tested, freshly scented portal machine. It turned out to be a holographic screen/keyboard, and began to search for other dimensions. On the screen, he saw various locations that were very unimpressive to him, such as Beach City, the Land of Ooh, Elmore, the Park, Endsville, some random foster's home for imaginary friends, Camp Kidney, Aaron City, a house in the middle of nowhere, a ridiculously large treehouse, Aku City, and a whole slew of other locations that we had to cut for time. Finally, the malicious monkey came across a location that was plain, and yet, for some odd reason that even Mojo couldn't explain, it felt strange and insane at the same time. A cul-de-sac located near a town called Peach Creek. Mojo's evil grin widened as he said, "Perfect. Those little brats won't know what hit them. As he quickly typed in a coordinates, the Powerpuff Girls crashed through the laboratory ceiling in a heroic fashion. "Stop right there, Mojo Jojo!" exclaimed the girls in unison. The calculating chimp stood on his chair with a smug look on his face. "Oh no, the Powerpuff Girls are here! Whatever shall I do?" Rarity would be very pleased with that one.
Whatever shall we do?
Said Mojo in an extremely over-the-top tone of voice. Blossom courageously said, "Give it a rest, Mojo. We'll stop whatever plan you have up your furry sleeve." Bubbles and Buttercup chimed in, "Yeah." Mojo evilly grinned, "Oh really? Are you Powerpuffs ready for this?" Before any of the girls could react, he quickly pressed a button which, quite literally, froze the girls in place. The prickly primate activated the portal machine with a single switch, which caused the girls' frozen bodies to get sucked into the pulsating vortex. "Oh, Mojo, you horrible, horrible monster." "Yes, yes, yes," cheered Mojo. He struck an overly dramatic pose and exclaimed, "I did it! I, Mojo Jojo, finally rid myself of those accursed Powerpuff Girls." The vile villain grinned. "Now, to take over Townsville, and after that, the world!" He let out a gigantic evil laugh that echoed across the laboratory. Mojo's stomach then grumbled later as the maniacal monkey said, "Ooh, better get a snack first." And that's the end of Chapter 1. So on to Chapter 2. The Cul-de-sac of Peach Creek. No, still doesn't sound right. Step right up, folks, and welcome to the wonderful, the mystifying, the amazing Time Travel Ed, yelled Eddy as he stood on a crate and held up a money jar. The various children of the cul-de-sac stood in line, eager to try out the new scam. Oh, you poor, poor souls. If you only paid attention to the recent events that happened in the last chapter. "Shut it, Mr. Know-It-All," Eddy hissed. "You're ruining my scam." Then Eddy excitedly grinned as Rolf first came up, complete with 25 cents in hand. As Rolf put his quarter in the jar, the urban farmer happily said, Rolf would normally be opposed to external forces that threaten the son of a shepherd's way of life, but he will make an exception today. Rolf is very curious about the beginnings of his ancestry. Eddy hadn't even listened to a word Rolf said, as he was too busy thinking about how the scam could be a gold mine for a whole lot of jawbreakers. Poor, poor Eddy, because you are so blinded by your fantasies, you are already signaling your own doom. "Hello, Ed Boy?" asked Rolf as he waved his hand at Eddy. The self-proclaimed leader snapped back to reality and exclaimed, Yeah, sure, whatever. Now get in there." Eddy snapped back to reality. Oh, there goes gravity. Oh, he pushed him near Ed and Double D, who motioned him to walk over and stand near the rubber band. Afterwards, Ed dumped the fake time travel box over him and quickly held the rubber band back, complete with a dopey grin on his face. Double D walked up to Eddy and said, "I successfully installed a landing pad all the way in the junkyard, Eddy." The shortest Ed boy nodded and replied, "Good, now out of the way, sockhead." Double D quickly ran behind Eddy as Ed released the rubber band back on the son of a shepherd, slingshot style. The cul-de-sac kids looked in awe as Rolf was sent flying through the air.
If I can just quickly say, as an Ed, Edd, and Eddy fan, they did a time travel scam in the show, and it was very similar to that, except the slingshot wasn't involved, and instead of the junkyard, it was in the woods. So yeah, I mean, this guy's very close.
Eddy cackled to himself while Ed exclaimed, "Look at him go!" Double D grabbed a pair of binoculars so he could see if Rolf would land on the installed pad. The sock-headed boy's eyes widened as he saw something that he would never have even dreamed of seeing in his 12 years of existence. A huge swirling portal that was quickly opening up in the skies above. The Powerpuff Girls then fell through said portal, still frozen solid. They accidentally fell on top of Rolf, who was conveniently soaring right near the clouds. What followed was a very brutal crash landing, not on a safe but oh so comfortable pad, but on a harsh pavement of the junkyard. Double D shrieked, "Rolf, oh dear," and was about to run off to the crash site when Eddy immediately grabbed him by the back of the shirt. "Hey, hold on, Double D," said Eddy. "We have more customers waiting for us." Double D exclaimed, "Eddy, I'm sorry, but something fell out of the sky and on top of Rolf. I had to go see if he's okay." He motioned to Ed to follow him, which the big lug did. As the two Eds ran off, Eddy yelled out, "Guys, hold on a second, will ya?" He groaned in anger as he turned around to see the other cul-de-sac kids, all of whom had confused expressions on their faces. Naz asked, did something happen to Rolf?" Eddy nervously chuckled and replied, No, just wait right here." The shortest Ed boy then quickly ran all the way over to the junkyard, where he saw the other two Eds gaze at the crater that Rolf had created. Eddy growled, "What gives? We've got other customers back there waiting for the next ride, and you're checking out String Bean here?" Double D glared at Eddy and said, "Well, excuse me, mister, but we have to see if Rolf is alright. Ed, lift those objects off of him." Ed nodded and lifted the frozen superheroines off of the urban farmer. The big lug then grabbed Rolf by the leg and lifted him up. The son of a shepherd was comically flattened like a pancake, and the cardboard box somehow had been torn to shreds. Rolf immediately regained consciousness and his body returned to normal. He saw Ed, who was holding him by the leg, and yelled, "Lay your hand off of Rolf, dim-witted Ed boy!" He swiftly kicked Ed in the face and fell to the ground. The young foreign boy looked around, trying to see if he had landed in his ancestry's past, but only saw various wax dinosaurs scattered around the junkyard. Realizing that a certain con man deceived him with a scam, Rolf glared daggers at Eddy, who nervously whistled in response. "Are you trying to insult the great ancestry of Rolf?" he yelled. Eddy, who was sweating bullets, stammered, Hey, Rolf, at least you traveled somewhere, right?" Rolf sighed and responded, "Well then, Ed boy, since you disrespected the son of a shepherd's cherished family history with your prehistoric creatures made of wax," he began to pull out a third identical shoe from his pocket. "You will now suffer the wrath of the almighty three-shoe beating!" Eddy's eyes widened as he gave out a small whimper, "Mommy!" While Rolf proceeded to beat the living tar out of Eddy, Double D exclaimed at the frozen subjects that laid before him. He thought, "What are these creatures? They look like little girls, but they don't resemble any human we know, nor do they resemble any other species on Earth." Ed looked at the frozen heroines and said, "They look like the bug-eyed aliens from I Was a Alien Bug Beast in CryptoVision."
Again, as an Ed, Edd, and Eddy fan, I just want to comment that these guys have technically seen aliens before, but that was part of the invaded Cartoon Network crossover event, so people are very wary as to whether or not that's actually canon.
Double D took Ed's comment into consideration and thought, maybe Ed's right. Maybe they could be aliens, but I have to make sure of it. Perhaps I should unfreeze one of them and ask where they came from. This is a major event in human history after all. Suddenly, a bruised and badly beaten Eddy was thrown right next to Ed, who cheerfully said, "Hiya, Eddy." Eddy, in a dazed, distorted manner, spat out, "Shut up, Ed." The self-proclaimed leader got up, quickly shook his head, dusted himself off, and he was good as new. Eddy then saw Double D lay out a bunch of experimental tools. He walked over to the intelligent Ed boy and said, "Thanks for nothing, sockhead." Double D shushed Eddy and said, "I'm trying to unfreeze these creatures, Eddy." Eddy looked at the frozen superheroines and thought, what the heck are these things? Cheap-looking porcelain dolls? Heh, I cracked myself up. Double D selected a magnifying glass and laid alongside the other tools. The intelligent Ed boy proceeded to hold out the tool near the sun, which created a small beam of heat. The concentrated beam hit the ice encasing Blossom, causing the ice to melt, which quickly freed the small girl. She wiped her eyes and groaned. Suddenly Blossom gasped, as she instantly remembered the events of the previous chapter. She saw her sisters were still frozen, and she used her heat vision to free them as well. Both Eddy and Double D's eyes widened at the shock of all this, while Ed exclaimed, "Cool! The Powerpuff Girls were officially okay! Woohoo! Thank you, cartoon physics!" Buttercup groaned. "What the heck happened?" Bubbles asked. "Where's Mojo?" Blossom replied. "That's what I was about to ask." The pink leader saw Double D and asked, Sir, I was wondering, where are we, and how did we get here?" Double D replied, "Why, you're in Peach Creek." The girls collectively gasped in unison and exclaimed, "Peach Creek?" And that's the end of Chapter 2, so now we're on to Chapter 3. Yeah, why'd you ask?" questioned Eddy. Blossom replied, "You see, we're from the city of Townsville. Have you ever heard of it?" "No, what the heck is a Townsville?" Buttercup groaned. "She means Townsville, doofus. Big city that gets attacked by monsters every other week. You've never heard of that place?" "No, I haven't, and quit calling me doofus, you little brat," angrily said Eddy. Buttercup growled, but before she could retaliate in violence, Bubbles quickly held her sister back. Double D inquired, "So this Townsville is a small city or a large metropolis?" Ed asked in an excited manner, "Does that mean Superman lives with you guys?" "No," shouted all three girls. Double D sighed and said, "Well, I'm sorry, but we've never heard of this city that you speak of." Blossom sighed and turned to her sisters. "There's one explanation for this, girls. Mojo must have sent us to another dimension." Bubbles and Buttercup both gasped in shock. "How can you be so sure?" asked Buttercup. Blossom replied, "It looked like he was sitting next to some kind of circular machine, so it's gotta be a portal." Double D spoke up. "Pardon me if I'm interrupting, but who are you three supposed to be?" Bubbles happily replied, "We're the Powerpuff Girls, and where we come from, we're superheroes. We were sent here by an evil monkey villain named Mojo Jojo." The sock hat-wearing Ed boy wondered how to respond to such a strange response. He then facepalmed himself and said, "Of course, it had to be a superhero group." Eddy scoffed and glared at me, the narrator. "What is it now, my dear Eddy? This is the crossover you were referring to? We're teaming up with some little girl superheroes?" asked Eddy in an annoyed tone of voice. "Well, yes, Eddy. I mean, come on, Eddy. This could be really fun." The short Ed boy was suddenly held up by Ed, who happily said, "The narrator's right, Eddy. This is gonna be fun." He mindlessly threw his friend over his shoulder and asked Bubbles, "Blue girl, do you like animals and gravy?" Bubbles replied, "I think gravy's okay, but I love animals." Ed gasped and yelled, "Ed loves animals too!" Bubbles' eyes widened in shock. "Really?" Ed grinned and nodded rapidly. He asked, "Do you want to be friends?" Bubbles exclaimed, "Yeah!" The big oaf then hugged Bubbles tightly and giggled in response. The other Eds and Powerpuffs looked in disbelief. Eddy asked, "What the heck is happening right now?" Blossom stammered, I don't know." Eddy groaned and turned back to Double D. "Well, looks like we're teaming up with these clowns." Buttercup glared at the short Ed boy and stuck her tongue out. Eddy yelled, "Why, you little... What are you gonna do about it?" smirked the green Powerpuff. Eddy thought about his next move for a bit, then kicked some dust at the small girl's face. "See ya!" he then yelled as he ran off. Buttercup screamed, "Get back here!" She quickly flew off in Eddy's direction. Ed grinned. "Let's go follow them," Bubbles said. "Okay." They happily ran/flew off, laughing and giggling with glee. Blossom and Double D sighed in unison. The little heroine asked, "Let me guess, these guys also drive you crazy sometimes?" Double D replied, "Yes, unfortunately." Blossom said, "Well, let's follow them." The sock hat boy nodded and the two of them followed their respective companions. And that's the end of chapter 3, so looks like this is where we're gonna have to stop because, yeah, this is, at the time of recording this, the last chapter. Honestly, I would like to see this story continue. Same thing that happened with KP and Equestria Girls. I would like to see this story continue. It was very well written up until this point, and even though I'm not 120% familiar with a lot of the source material, even though I'm gonna try and catch up on it, I would actually like to see this continue, and I want to see where the story is going to go from here. What made these 3 chapters of this story work are the same things that made Babysitting and KP and Equestria Girls such good crossover fanfics for me, because I thought that they did a good job bringing the shows together and having the characters interact with one another, and that's really what makes a good crossover fanfic, when you have the characters interacting so well off of one another. And honestly, I think the story did a very good job, and yeah, I would really like to see the story continue.
I mean, yeah, kid, you're right on the money. It was a good crossover, and like you said, as a person who does know both these shows, the person who wrote this did a very good job up until this point. And yeah, I think the story would be really awesome if it did continue. But that's just me. Now, if you need me, I gotta go because I'm actually gonna be reading an official crossover between Cartoon Network characters in comic book form for a review coming up. So yeah, that's just me. I'm the Media Wiz because one art form wasn't enough, and this isn't even my video, and yet I'm ending it.
Whoa, dude, did he just end my video for me?